Morning all, thanks for
Good
being here.
morning. Yeah, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that we have the opportunity to talk about the grieving brain. Um, we all struggle. None of us avoids grief at some point in our life. We all have losses. We all experience this loss, whether it's mother or father, or sibling, or a child, or a spouse, or even a pet, or even people who are in California are struggling with the loss of their whole life right in front of them. We think of the wildfires. So I think it's a really, really interesting topic, and I don't think we've had very little discussion about it over the course of our lifetime. How do we deal with it? I think the first person who really made an impact was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross with her 5 stages of grief. And people are still following those 5 stages of grief, but there's a lot of truth in what she has to say, but I think people get stuck because they think they have to follow them in the order and so on and so forth, and that's not the way it is. We experience all these different feelings of what are they? Denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance, and sometimes a lot of times what happens is we experience them at different times, and also the idea of being able to be away from it. People sometimes, I think, feel that they can't be away from it, but the reality is it's really good to be away from it. For instance, if you're in the middle of grief and then you get invited to a party and you feel like you can go, that's really good, because there's this kind of cross experience of having going on with your life normally and then experiencing the effects of grief, and then having normal life and so on and so forth. And the more I think you can balance that, the better off you are. But anyway, now all of this research has been done. They're continuing to do more and more research. And Mary Frances O'Connor, in her book, The Grieving Brain, has put together not only her own research, she's a neuropsychologist, but also she's reviewed a lot of the other research in other books. So this morning, we're going to listen to her talking about a lot of her research, and she'll be interviewed interviewed by another woman who is a physician, I think a psychiatrist, who's also done work in the grief process. So it's an interesting conversation between the two of them. So I hope you enjoy it, and we'll stop and have like 15 minutes afterwards for discussion. Actually, this is the interview done by Family Action Network. So if you want to go back and visit it, you can just go online, on YouTube, and it's not available there.
That's right, we'll be found here, you can just Google it.
And there's several other interviews with her, if you go online too, with other people. But I do, some of them are very good. I didn't view all of them, but.
You told us about this, you brought it to us. Anything you want to say before we just open it up?
No, I think they just bring up a lot of really, really important points. So I just wanted to see what you all thought. What have you learned have you learned anything from this? What struck you as being new, different?
Well, I love the way that she is making a difference between grief and grieving. And I remember when I was still teaching, having a principal who had gone through breast cancer and then returned to work. And I was going through some brain surgery with my daughter and struggling. And she came up and she said, there are going to be days like this. And she was tearing, that the waves just come over the rocks at you. And know that we're here for you, and it will gradually get better. And until reading her with that image of the grief coming over, I hadn't heard anybody else refer to it like that. And at the moment, that was really appropriate. So I appreciate it. And then that grieving, if we never let go of the grieving for people.
It's with us. I mean,
it's with us.
When you think about the brain, the brain is so complex, and the brain is learning, and our learning happens in so many different areas of the brain. So we learn that the person died. That's one area of the brain. But there's this other attachment that we have that's learned in a very different area. So the attachment to your mother, the attachment to your father, attachment to your sister, any of the attachment to the life that you've always had. And that has gone on for such a long period of time. And then when that's gone, you have this recent memory kind of working against the this long-term implicit memory that has to rework itself. So you can understand how long it takes for the process for us to get through, because your brain has to relearn all those different things. So you still have the experience of, well, I know that person is gone and I still feel them. I still feel my mother. I still feel my mother's presence. And I still want, when I'm in tough times, I still want my mother. I remember one of the women I visited from Karen Calling, she was at the end of her life, and she talked to her mother all the time.
Yeah.
So that stays with us for a really, really long time.
And also, I think, again, what they call them neurons, I picture all these neurons as every experience or thought I've ever had. It's there, it's somewhere
It's there.
up here. And so I picture with what I've learned today is the reason I have so much difficulty figuring stuff out is that all these neurons have to adjust to the new information. And
That's right.
is
And
that
that takes a
right?
long
That's
time.
somehow helpful. But when it was described that she couldn't listen to music, well, nor could I for 10 years. I could not listen to music. But it wasn't her reason. It was my reason. And my reason was I'm not ready for music, period. I thought of nothing more than that. Couldn't enjoy it, forget it. In fact, I would be mad when music would come on. Turn it off.
There's your anger.
Ah,
Yeah.
it's all fascinating.
But then if you continue to do that and you continue to dismiss that and never,
Yes,
then you're holding on to it even more.
yes. That's right. That's that negative reinforcement, isn't it?
Exactly. Negative reinforcement. And so it's complex, and the whole, I think the discussion of the woulda, coulda, shoulda,
Yeah.
is huge. And I've experienced that myself. I'm thinking about John, okay, well, if I've only done da 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 da, maybe it would have been da 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 da, maybe it would have been, then I have to say to myself,
Yeah.
but the disease is the driver. The disease is the driver. It has nothing to do with me. I've been really interested in this because my dearest friend lost her husband suddenly, and I watched her work. I watched her experience her grief over this period of time. And I remember going up to spend a weekend with her, and we spent hours talking about what could have happened if the doctor had done this. Should I do if this had happened, and this had happened, and this happened, should I sue? Should I do this? It was all the woulda, coulda. And the reality is, and it took her a long time until finally a friend of hers, the doctor, said, no, this is what happened. It would have happened anyway, no matter what. And then she was finally able to let go and move on. But she went through all that, still trying to hold on. You hold on with also, I found myself doing this the other day. I was in bed and I just put my hand over on the pillow where John would be. And I'm still trying to hold on to him being with me. He can't be with, but I'm still trying to hold on to him. And I think what we need to do is normalize that and not think that's an oddball behavior, or holding on somebody's clothes or holding onto the, you know, something was special for them or whatever, that's normal behavior. But if you set the room up, if I never take his clothes out of the closet and I live with him the rest of my life, then
Yeah.
that's something else. So then I'm not able to move on. So the reality is, when I move the clothes out of the closet, that's a normal way, a little normal way of helping me to move into the new reality. So that's what I was talking about earlier. We have to kind of go back and forth between the two. Acknowledge that I need to smell his clothing so I can get a sense of him. But it's okay, but then I can move out, I can move the clothes away, and I can move on to the next step. So it's sort of that back and forth, back and forth. But as you say, at the end of your life, I mean, you're still
Yeah.
grieving for your mother, you know, you still have that period of time, because that is a part of who you are. I mean, it's that connection, that bonding that we have.
And one, as somebody who, when my dad was dying, one of the most wonderful things that I still have from him was him saying, Lily, you've done everything you could, and thank you.
As a kid.
And it was and is such a gift. And I try to take that into my adult children and repeatedly telling them how much I appreciate what they are doing. And I hope that someday I will be able to say the exact same words, because it helps me stop when I do the woulda, coulda, I should have, to know that he said that. The other thing that I found helpful, that Dad was a board certified oncologist and helped set up the first hospice here in the Midwest. He was very immersed in people's dying. And he said, he wanted me to, so I was with him every day, and said, okay, today, pull out a pad of paper, we're gonna write my memorial service. And do I want blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. So the tears are streaming, and I'm going, well, what's wrong? I'm like, okay, I know you're dying, Dad, but I'm gonna miss you. And he said, I know, you will always miss me. And I'm like, yeah, and I do, and I still hear his voice, I still hear mom's voice. And I found that very helpful too, to know that here's somebody who, he must have still missed his parents and, you know, the people he lost. And that sort of helped normalize a little bit, like, that's okay. I still miss you, you know, 12 years later, and I always will, and that's okay. But it's a hard thing to
It's a hard thing.
process.
You have to, but you have to process it.
Yeah.
Because one of the things they talked about is, if you don't process it, then you get this complicated grief. I have a friend I went to high school with, her husband died pretty early on from cancer. She never ever worked through it.
All avoidance by its nature, by its definition, is never gonna work.
Yeah, the more you avoid it, the worse it.
Because it's still in you, and you can't deny that. And also the hope in, from what all of you were saying, starting that, sure, grief, that's a thing, it's an obstacle. But grieving, you're actively doing something.
Right.
And the verbs give me more hope than the.
I think JS is trying to say something, and
Yes, I'm sorry, JS, we can't hear you, what were you
are
saying?
you muted?
No. But,
I'm just talking to myself, sorry.
Okay.
that's all right, I'd love to hear more.
I was reminded as she was talking about this thing about avoidance, we had, a good talk with the CNC. We had a fireside chat with Sherry Felty, which I think it's available online to anyone who wants to hear it after the fact. Sherry gave us some good insight for, how to relate to people who are dealing with chronic and terminal illness and are dealing with the fact that there will be grief, or they are grieving in anticipation. But she said the thing about, be the first person to ask Like if I'm ill and everyone knows I'm ill and everyone avoids talking about it because nobody wants to make me sad, then that's a burden that I carry. Anytime I walk into a room, I'm the one who's ill. But if you're the caregiver or a friend or a fellow, church member, and you come over and say, how is it today? How you feeling today? Don't make it like, give me the whole saga, but make it prescient, timely, and just a simple question, then you bring it up and you take away the burden of that person. And I was thinking, in my mind as a pastor, that's the reason that we as pastors need to acknowledge when people are grieving, how much do you miss? You need to name the person who's gone. I think our culture has a tendency to treat the grieving the same way we treat the terminally ill. Like, we don't want to talk about it, we don't want to bring it up because God forbid we make you cry, because then that's going to make us feel like we made you feel worse. And to not acknowledge that you're feeling bad is itself a punishment, right? So we, as a pastor, and then, all of us as people who care for other people, we just need to be aware that we could have a role in helping people not avoid it by acknowledging.
Yeah,
I
that was
have a
my other
friend.
question. How do we help? How do we help now you know this? How do you help the people around you then?
I had a friend whose son died, when he was very young, terribly. And she said the hardest thing for her is that no one used his name.
Yeah.
No one said,
Name him.
Ryan used to do such and such, or I remember Ryan doing this, or she said that was the biggest hole for her. It's like he did not exist because nobody used his name. I thought that was powerful.
I think one of the best things you can do is ask them, tell me about your husband, tell me about your son, tell me about, let them talk about the life that you had with them.
I had a friend whose father died on her birthday. And she was never able to celebrate her birthday for years because of the fact that her father died on that day.
I wanted to find out from what JS has said. Is it a good thing that you don't celebrate your birthday because that happened, or you can make it a celebration to remember the good, fun things you had with the individual on that day? Or what do you
I
guys
love
think?
the celebration.
I
This
love
was,
that.
this wasn't me, it was a friend of mine. And that's people very much tried to get her to do that. And it didn't, she chose not to try that.
Andy, to what you're saying, the year after my husband died, we had a birthday party for him, because he thought it was a national holiday. So we all celebrated it. So everybody, and there were probably, I don't know, 35 people, 40 people in the backyard, and everybody had a candle that was a firecracker.
Oh, fun.
So lit it up and sang. I couldn't have been sad if I tried to see all of that.
Yeah.
He would have been so thrilled. That was who he was. So celebrating that is my point, is a good thing.
Yes.
My star word is forgiveness. So I have been really focused a lot every day on forgiveness. And this brings me to thinking that way too, that when we aren't able to celebrate, or when we do feel too sad to do whatever, that or the would have, could have, should have, would, that it's okay to forgive ourselves. And it's okay to turn. And the other one is thinking about being grateful to have the opportunity to go forward and well, for me, when I think of mom and dad, that I'm grateful for their lives and for the time that I had with them. And I try hard to forgive myself for all the things that I didn't do. Yeah.
I think you can also celebrate how much they are a part of you.
Yeah.
When you think about, I have come from love of two people, and they're still within me. I have their genes in me, And then hold on to, I think, the relationship that we had I'm holding on to the relationship I had with John, I don't have much of a relationship with John, like he's still alive, but I don't have much of a relationship, but hold on to that relationship. But I think what I'd like for us to think about this idea of connection and the need to care for one another. To need to care for one another until, even especially at the end of life. What do you think about that?
I think it's really important to try and take care of them, even if they don't respond. Because if it's in your nature to want to care for someone and you deny yourself the chance to do that before they go, that puts another burden on you after they die. For me, it was really important to care for him even when he didn't respond.
And I think
I
it's
so
important.
support the idea of JS because I have a situation. When my mom was alive, I did everything in my power, in my ability, to make sure that she never lacked or she never. I never missed anything of hers. Any request I made sure I did for her. So when she was gone, I don't regret anything. Leaving the earth is part of human nature. So I accept it. And the times that I miss her or I have memories of her, I have the headscarf she wore to her hospital the last time she went and never came back. I just throw it on me and it helps me deal with the situation. It helps me know that she's with me and whatever situation I'm going, I get comfort from that. So if we do our best to give them the whatever care for them, it helps. I think it helps you as an individual. That's how I feel. It's so important.
And I think it helps them that you're still there with them, through the whole process too. But that maintains that connection as long as possible.
And it's so interesting that we're not willing to give ourselves the care that we gave to them. That during our grieving process, the grace that we gave to them, we won't accept for ourselves.
Right.
Or give ourselves.
That's a valuable insight.
And I think to acknowledge how the care changes near the end, that the things, okay, speaking from my experience with taking care of my parents, that things that we used to do and get a lot of pleasure from suddenly were not what they needed anymore. And so it took work on my part walking in the door to then take a deep breath and realize, okay, what would bring you comfort today? What would bring you happiness and that would change. So I also feel like that's part of it, of being flexible enough to see, is it a hand on the shoulder, or do they really want to go shopping? Okay, let's go. It's not the first thing I would have thought for today, but it's what you want, or go drive to the lake, or, but listening to what they want.
I think touch is an important part
I
of
think
that.
touch is
A really big important.
Wasn't that
part.
brought up in the fan video, that our brains react almost identically between different types of touching, whether it's hearing, speaking, or physically touching, or somehow feeling present to someone? Or did I just dream that up? I thought they said that.
It's a great dream, keep going.
It
Yeah.
affects our brains the same way, so let's communicate, let's, the heart of empathy, just remind everybody, yes, I'm here, I hear you, and we're social animals, right?
We are social animals.
What kind of memories would we have if we didn't have the memories of each other? What I said to you, what I heard you say.
I also think, just after you speak, I thought of this deer who I watched come across my backyard with his fawn, with her fawn, and the fawn laid down on the other side of the house. And then the mother walked off. Well, then hours later, after I made phone calls, what do I do? Should I feed him? I'm just like panicking to care for the fawn. And the advice on the phone, let it be. The mother knows, the fawn knows. Sure enough, hours later, the fawn comes, about running down Elm Street, cuts into the yard, gets the fawn, gets her up, and they leave. Oh, she parked him there.
They do, they park him there.
Safe place, you were safe, you were a safe harbor.
Yeah, they
And
park him
yes,
in a safe
And,
place.
and what I'm trying to say is that whoever has died, but they're not dead yet, and you're there, and you're saying your last piece. I have this hunch that there's more going on than just that little conversation, because the person who's ill is very knowledgeable about I'm not sure what, but when you hold his hand or you say something that's approval, positive, I will miss you, or this means 1,000 things. To
the person receiving it.
Yeah, to the person receiving it. Like that strange communication.
Mhm.
I don't know, but I've never thought of that before. No, until now.
It's complex, it's really complex. I would say, my experience, I've had lots of cards and support and hugs, and it's hard for me to even. It's so supportive. It's hard for me to even talk about how supportive that is. So I think that connecting with other people when you know they're going through is really, really important. I think with my friend, one of the things I did with her is she just had a real struggle, but she said one of the best things I did, I called her every single day. She didn't answer the phone, but I left a message. I say, I'm thinking about you. I love you very much. I hope you're having a little joy today. I hope it's not so bad.
Yeah.
And I just continued to and I didn't expect, and she said, I knew I didn't have to respond to you. And that's the thing. You know, you don't want to put pressure on them. They have to respond to you, but just keep showing that you're there, you're available, you're thinking about them, that kind of thing. I think is really critical.
This same woman that lost her son, immediately, everybody showed up. And she said people would hug her quickly because it was too hard to be that close to her grief. And I had gone, and she said, the one thing I noticed about you is you hugged me and you didn't let go until
You held on.
She said that was startling and wonderful. But our fear.
People were afraid for me to be alone. After a group of people had stopped by, and she said, well, what do you do when you're alone? And I said, I'm under the care of Doctors Ben and Jerry.
My two favorites.
So people brought their favorite kinds of the stuff. I had a refrigerator full of it, and it really helped.
That's great. I was thinking about that speaking of ice cream. Yes, when my dad died, he loved ice cream. He had ice cream every single day of his life, and his favorite was butter pecan. So the day that we had the funeral, after the funeral, we all went to the ice cream store and celebrated.
I love it.
Great.
That's a wonderful memory. So, anyway, I suppose it's time for us to go.
I guess, yes, the time for church, but thank you, Carol, and thanks everybody. This is.
So this is the book,
Yeah.
The Grieving Brain, and she also has written another book, I understand, I haven't read it yet, called The Grieving Body, which I think is gonna be really interesting.
Yes, no.
Thank you, JC.
To be with y'all.
All right, good seeing you.
You can see this again on YouTube.
And before you leave today, I copied
I'm sorry,
off
Connie.
the US senators' telephone numbers So if you have something you want to call and say to them.
Yes, please take one.
Yeah,
A few
sure.
things,
Please take one.
just a
They're-
number two.
Yeah, they're over on the table.
It should, we shouldn't hesitate, should we?
Yeah, and it's not partisan, I mean, everybody's name is
Oh,
there, so I'm not pushing anybody's agenda, but
I should have said that at the beginning, but thank you.
that's okay.
Yes, I'm gonna take one.